Czechast, a podcast in English about Czech and Moravian society, history, culture and economy.
Hello and welcome to Czechast, the podcast in English about all things Czech. I'm Vít Pohanka. What does it really mean to arrive in a new country? Not just to stay there for a time, but to understand it, to adapt and perhaps even to belong. My guest today is Alejandro Cruz, a Mexican who's made Prague his home. He is a businessman who recently started, at least in my view, a very interesting project.
Hola a todos, hello and welcome to Just Checking. This is a podcast designed for you, for the people like me who are expats who live in the Czech Republic, and we want to understand more about this culture.
So we talk about cultural differences, identity, and the sometimes uncomfortable process of learning how to fit into a society that plays by very different rules.
You need to be humble, you need to listen. And that's the big mistake that I did. I didn't take the time to read and ask. And that's a big lesson, and that's something that I share with everybody listening here. Whenever you go to a country, never go in a power position. It's better to go in a humble position in which you research, you ask first before even talking.
And Alex doesn't shy away from describing how that cultural insensitiveness can be embarrassing.
I will be talking on the phone on the metro, imagine that, to my mom. Like, hey mom, how are you doing? I had a great day. Imagine this loud. In the metro. People were looking at me like, co to je zachowani? Co to je? And I remember listening to this, and because I didn't speak Czech back then, people, I was like, oh my God, they're so happy listening to me. No, mistake. You need to go to a country, humble, ask, and behave according to the rules. It's very important, and I encourage every foreigner to do so. It is not good to go to a country and impose your culture. Never.
So, get ready to hear from someone on a journey from faraway Central America to the heart of Europe, and who has now been finding his place in the Czech capital for a number of years.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.
Hello everybody, my name is Alejandro Cruz. I come from Mexico. I'm a businessman who also is fond of arts, music and photography. I work on the digital side of things, of business, and I'm based in Prague. And also I recently launched a podcast about identity, integration, culture, inclusion. And this is one of the focus of this chat. Thank you so much, Vid.
Let me just ask you are Mexican, as you rightly said. Why Prague? I don't know, why not Vienna? Why not Berlin or Paris?
I always say, and I always answer to that question, that Prague chose me. So this is my second time living in Prague. I lived in Prague in 2006, and I was working for a Mexican company that was purchasing European companies. So I was responsible for mapping out processes, interviewing executives, and doing all the due diligence so we could purchase them. And actually we did. So that same company that we purchased called me back years later, 10 years after, if I could come back to open their digital center in Prague 5. And I felt this was a great chance. An opportunity of the sort doesn't happen twice. And I took it. And I came to Prague because I always felt great here. It's a great city. And I'm glad that I'm part of the I'm not part of, that I could see and witness the growth and transformation of this great city.
So, what sort of timeline are we talking about if this is your second time in Prague?
So first I lived here for almost a year in 2006, and then I came back in 2017. So 10 years after. And the city was completely different. I remember back then, people were coming to me on the street trying to practice English. It's really funny. I remember being in Charles Bridge. Of course, I looked very different. I still look very different, right? Look Latin. And of course, back then in 2006, there was less exposure to foreigners. So I remember people coming to say hi, trying to practice English, asking about my country. So now when I came back, it was more European. Already you got the funds of EU and some of the areas of the city that back then were not as developed. Now there are as Carlin, right? And now let's say Prague 5 now is undergoing a massive change. So I'm glad to see that I call it my city because I live here for a long time, is continuously growing in a good way.
You're absolutely right. This is kind of interesting because even though I was living mostly outside of Czechia between 2006 and 2017, I kept coming back. So I saw the change gradually. But I suppose
Yeah.
if you were not here for such a long time, it must have been quite, I don't know whether shock would be too strong a word, but it must have been very, very different. But Alejandro, let's start, with what's happening right now. Your podcast, Just Checking. It has taken off incredibly quickly. What was the idea? Why did you decide to do that? And why do you think it's been such a success?
So it's several questions, and I'm going to answer one by one. Why did I launch it? Just Checking is a love letter to the Czech Republic. It is a platform, and it's becoming a platform, not only a podcast. And I believe it is a way to give back. I believe, and not only foreigners in the Czech Republic. When you choose to move abroad to another country, it is important to integrate, adapt, and give back. Because as a foreigner, you're taking a space and you're taking something from that country. So just checking is a way for me to showcase through my guests what is the Czech Republic globally. That's why it is in English. My forum is global and it is a love letter to my home, to the Republic, because it is a tiny country. In Mexico, people still say Czechoslovakia. So it is a way to educate people through different guests. I'm glad that through arts, I have met a lot of relevant people as my guests. Martin Barry, the founder of Manifesto Market, Michal Treter, the owner of the Treter Bar chain, and Sierra Holanova, who won Hell's Kitchen reality show, and so on. I'm bringing influencers, right, from both Czechia and Mexico to showcase the wealth of culture of both regions. So that is why Just Checking. How it came, it is a long story, but I'm gonna try to simplify it. When you come to a new country, you make mistakes, and I made a lot of mistakes, right? I was loud on the tram, I was loud in public places, and unfortunately, I suffered some racial attacks, right? And it took me time to understand what happened. Maybe I was doing something wrong, right? Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But after I healed from that, I said, I'm not going to respond violence with violence. I'm going to respond violence with love. And it's part of the content of Just Checking. In the end, I always ask I always ask my guests, what can we do to integrate better? What can we do to be respectful, right? Because my culture and Czech culture, even though we believe in family and we share a couple of things, we're radically different in others, right? Like public noise, like being chauvinist, like exaggerating, right? So, in that sense, it allowed me to learn. And finally, why is it successful? It is a global podcast, right? So my market is not only Czechia, it's also Mexico. So I have 20 markets that are listening and watching this podcast, such as Mexico, United Kingdom, Switzerland, India, the Czech Republic, Peru, France, which means, uh, and also I'm working with back then in Mexico, I work with different prominent magazines. I shouldn't say the brands, but I'm gonna say them. One of them is Forbes, right? Forbes Mexico. So people know me. I have, let's say, my own brand in Mexico. So by publishing this, I already have a follow of people who have an interest on this. And also, if you notice, it is a unique topic. Most podcasts talk about different things. If you go to actually Spotify, there is no classification for my podcast. Hence, it's a new thing. I use visuals. It's a visual audio podcast. You need to actually watch it because I invest a lot on the way things move and the way that conversation flow, how I'm dressed, how I study everything to bring something new. In fact, Prague Morning classified it as a unique and perhaps the future of podcasts, which makes me, I actually cried when I read that because it is so different. In the upcoming podcast now, I'm studying, which is with Marketa Irglova and Nasem Alabad, which are artists. I'm looking to make a cinematic take of the video. So I'm working with cinema producers to make those interviews look as a piece of a movie to honor these artists. So it is always about thinking ahead and bringing something new. And in the end, it's love, right? How am I going to showcase Czech in the best way? How, as a Mexican, I'm going to make my people proud? And I think that connects. When it's honest, you connect, right?
That's definitely true. And just out of the names that you mentioned, I'd like to mention Marketa Irglova because I happened to interview her. For the listeners who might not know her, she's a songwriter, she's a singer, she's a musician, a very successful one. And she got an
Yes.
Oscar for music together with,
She's our first Oscar winner in
yeah.
Czechia. Let us make it clear.
Well, she wasn't the first actually, because the director Jiří Menzel
Oh,
got an Oscar back in the 1960s,
oh,
though. Yeah, and
oh,
there was
sorry.
one Oscar
Thank you
for
for
a
fixing
Slovak
that.
film back in the 60s as well. And Kolia by Zdeněk Svěrák, father, who starred in it, and his son, that got an Oscar actually in 1996. I'm sorry to be, that's the
No,
journalist
no,
in
this
me.
is great. This is great. And actually, I'm here to learn. I'm never
Yeah,
here to actually post. So
but
why in the
back
news
to.
it said that she's the first?
It
Question to
was
you.
wrong because that was bad journalism. I'm sorry to say that.
All right.
That wasn't
Okay.
good quality
I'm glad I'm here.
journalism. But she
I
was the
learned
first
something.
to get it for music, in for the
Correct.
main theme, I think, the main
Yeah,
song.
once.
And I happened to interview her, believe it or not, in Brooklyn because not only did she get an Oscar for the music, but she got a Tony Award in New York, which is a theater, a stage kind of award. So you're getting these kind of big names, right? I mean, that's also the idea a little bit of just checking.
I mean, I'm getting people who are connected to the brand, right? I always look at the profiles, I always research them, and I have been lucky that many of them say yes. And again, it is because they connect with the way I'm interviewing. If you see, even if they are celebrities or influencers, I don't talk about the gossip. I don't talk about the drama. I don't talk about, oh my God, who are you dating? Or how you make money. No. I'm interested in learning their soul. What is their journey that make them become successful? And that is something we all can learn, right? Because if we go back to the values, to the work ethics, to the way they think, to the what inspires them, you realize they're as human as you and I. They have fears, they have moments of doubt, they sometimes don't know what to do. They come to breakout points in which they don't believe in even in the things they do, but they keep on working and they make it happen. So I think that is the whole inspiration about just checking. We are all human, we all connect. No matter where you come from, if you work hard, you deserve a space, at least of respect. And that is what I'm trying to do, right? To showcase that through those guests from both Mexico and the Czech Republic.
Czechast is obviously a podcast in English about all things Czech. So let me ask you about Czechia, because you definitely come from a different kind of milieu, different society. I suppose some of it might be obvious, some of it might be difficult to explain. But what are the kind of main differences? What was most striking for you as someone from Mexico who came to Prague back in 2006?
All right, I need to give you context for that answer. Mexico is also a huge country. It's the size of Europe, taking away Russia and
Yeah.
Ukraine. We're almost that size. Sociologists say that Mexico is five countries on its own. I will come from the Southern Caribbean cluster, in which we're loud, we are musical based, all of the ancient sites are there, the tropics, the side, the beach. So we are by nature loud, very open, mostly indigenous looking, right? Because not many Spanish people or Europeans came there. Very, we have this duality of being super open, but also centered on family. Now you come to the Czech Republic, and I'm gonna talk about my own experience. It is a young country, right? And you come from communism, which of course shapes a country. The same way we're shaped by colonialism, even if it was a long time ago, some of your behaviors are shaped by the old times in not that old, by the recent times actually of communism. So I guess the differences rely there. Czechs will be more conservative, take more time to trust, they take time to really observe you, to really analyze you. Initially they can be cold, right? Whereas in my region, I'm not going to talk about the other regions of Mexico because they are very different, but in my region we are immediately open, right? We're close to the beach. We like music. We're loud as I'm talking now. I'm fast talking because I'm happy to be here. That doesn't resonate with the common, and I'm going to talk Prague because this is where I live, right? That doesn't resonate with the typical Prague person. They tend to be more conservative, more reserved. They really assess you. They take time to open. Whereas for us, or for me at least, I initially give you the full book open and I just keep closing the more you actually betray me. Here is completely opposite. The book is closed. You need to open it slowly with your behavior. That is one thing that to me is completely black and white, right? And it got me into trouble because I overshare initially personal things, thinking, oh, I'm gonna trust that person because I like him or her as a friend. Whereas they are like, oh, I like you initially, but you're oversharing too much. Don't tell me these things. I don't care. It's fine. It's part of the process of learning. Now I do not do it. But things in common, I think we also believe in family. We're centered around family. We are community based, though. Mexicans, we care about what friends, family, neighbors, everybody says. It's important to be taken into account in some opinion. Here, even though you're family driven, you're more European, of course, because this is Europe, more individual based. In the end, you go for it. You decide and you go for it. And that's good, right? I always say that someone who leaves a country or an expat, in terms of belonging and identity, leaves something behind. I had to leave part of my Mexicanity or South Mexico behind because it did not apply here and learn the new things. So when I go to Mexico, I not fully belong to Mexico and I not fully belong here, right? Because we always carry on things from Mexico. So that's the challenge. So this question is very relevant and I think it applies to all foreigners here. So those are the critical things that I spot on as differences. Being individualistic, the group versus the individual, and how people trust other people.
I really love the example that you mentioned, the open book and the closed book. And I just wonder if you come like that as an open book into a society such as Czech, doesn't it make you vulnerable?
It was terrible. The first years were terrible because I needed a friend. You come with no friends, you come alone, right? So I met this girl and I'm oversharing because I like her. And she was like, oh my God, what are you telling me? I don't need to know that. Or my new friends, right? I was telling about my experience dating this girl, or how I feel about this and this, who I like, who I don't like. And they're like, Alex, what are you telling? We don't need to know. We don't want to know. You're not my friend. I'm getting to know you. But you know what? It is healthy. It is healthy because it allows you to see the other side and that there is not one rule fits all. Is nobody to blame is the beauty of coming to a new country. And that's why I said maybe I made mistakes because I didn't research, right? I thought the thing is the first time that I came to the Czech Republic, you remember I said I came through a Mexican company. So I had the power. And because I was purchasing companies, it doesn't matter who I was. I was Mexican. I was interviewing, I was being Mexican, and I had the power because I was the purchasing one. I came back and I kept that experience in my mind. And this time, I was not in a power position. I came as an employee of a Czech company. So roles had changed. So I came very, yeah, I'm going to share like in the previous time. Guess what? No, you're in not that power position anymore. You need to be humble, you need to listen. And that's the big mistake that I did. I didn't take the time to read and ask. And that's a big lesson, and that's something that I share with everybody listening here. Whenever you go to a country, never go in a power position. It's better to go in a humble position in which you research, you ask first before even talking. Because I will be talking on the phone on the metro. Imagine that to my mom. Like, hey, mom, how are you doing? I had a great day. Imagine this loud in the metro. People were looking at me like, co to jest zachowanie? So to yeah. And I remember listening to this, and because I didn't speak Czech back then, people, I was like, oh my God, they're so happy listening to me. No, no, mistake. You need to go to a country humble, ask, and behave according to the rules. It's very important, and I encourage every foreigner to do so. It is not good to go to a country and impose your culture. Never.
Now, obviously, you've been here now since 2017, right? Was that without interruption, or did you spend some time abroad as well?
No, no, no. I've been here. I mean, I've been traveling because of my work and my family, but no, I've been here. Here,
So,
I'm based here.
so you got used to Czechia, right? I mean, how long did it take you to really start solid friendship, for example, in Czechia?
I think like 2 years. I think like 2 years. It took me 2 years to of learning mistakes, failure and error and truth. And also, I was lucky that I met a group of tolerant Czechs, right? The group that I was working with were Czechs who were keen on Latin America, speaking Spanish. So I was lucky, right? And they were really humble to accept me the way I was and to slowly giving me feedback on, no, don't do that, don't do this. I think it took me 2 years to really say I have a Czech friend. But I still have them, I have to say. They remain, they are loyal, all of them. The ones that I'm thinking of now, that were my friends back then, are still my friends. And even though we don't see each other weekly as we do in Mexico, whenever we meet, there are substantial deep talks. And I know that they're always there for me because they have helped me throughout my journey. Please.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just wondering, are they friends? Did you meet them through work or did you just meet them accidentally?
Some of them I met them through work, some of them I met them through traveling and through my past experience. Some of them I knew them from London, like Josef Marszalek. He was the chef of Harrods, and we knew each other by view because I was living in London. And then when he came back to Prague, and I was in Prague, and he was looking for a photographer for his books. And I had my photography account because I'm an artist also, very big and open. So he contacted me. Is that you, Alex? Yes. How are you? And we reconnected, and we really became friends then. You know.
Again, for the listeners, I mean, just to introduce Josef Marszalek, can you say a few words about him apart from the fact that you met in London where he was
Yeah.
looking for Harrods?
So I was living in London, and I was living very close to Harrods. And he was one of the main chefs for sweets and desserts in Harrods. And I was always going to Harrods for like coffee, la la. And then I heard him speaking Czech over the phone. And I said, oh, I lived in Czech Republic in 2006. How are you? La, 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 la. Being me, right? I talk with stones. And then he said, yes, I live in the Czech Republic. La, 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 la. So we knew each other just like this, like hi, hello, ahoy, bye, pa.
Right.
And then when he came to the Czech Republic, we reconnected, and he now became a very big figure in the Czech Republic, not only in the dessert industry, but as a cook, as a chef, and as a TV personality.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned traveling. I mean, do you do some traveling around Czechia as well?
Yes, I know most of Czechia. The only city that I miss is Ostrava, of the big cities. But I've been to Olomouc, Brno, Pardubice. Yeah, I mean, of course, if this is my country, right? Even if people say that I'm not Czech, the first step to do a podcast or to be able to be in a media is to know a little bit. I'm not an expert, right? But I have traveled. I take my car when I had a car. And with a previous girlfriend, we were always doing these road trips, right? To get to know small places. Yes, of course.
That's excellent. So that wasn't mostly travel for work, it was really for leisure and getting to know the country, right?
Of course, to be able to tell something. As a photographer, I need inspiration, right? and inspiration comes from knowledge. So when you're curious, the best source of content is nature, our people, our traditions. So traveling is just a door that opens that content, right?
Now tell me, with your experience and your background, what do you find, maybe three things that you find really very positive about Czechia? But in Czechast, I always try to look at the world as it is. So even though I don't like negative things, what are the negative things about Czechia that you would mention? But start with the positive. Or maybe you can start with the negative things and then we can get to the positive things so that we end on a
I'm gonna
positive
frame your question differently, and I'm gonna take things that are relevant to me and that make they can take the both sides. I like how reserved Czechs are and how they take the time to analyze you. Because when they become friends or close to you, they become really loyal. So, as a foreigner, it's both a positive and a negative. Because for me, it was like, oh my God, I need friends, and this person is taking 2 years to become a friend. To us, it's a negative. But for a Czech, it's a positive. Because once you give your friendship, it's a real, loyal, for the rest of your time friendship, right? So it's a dual thing. Another thing is how you care about your infrastructure and about your history. Look at Prague. It's a city that is history. It's a living museum, right? That architecture wise covers most of the eras of the European maximum times. That's something amazing that you don't see everywhere. And how proud you are on that, proud you are on that, and how Czechs grow listening to that and look after to that is great. In Mexico, unfortunately, we didn't look after our history that much until recently. We are now looking after our history, but back then we would actually destroy it. It was something of shame because of colonialism, whereas you protect it. That is great. Another thing is you're proud of your language. Even if you're a foreigner, you like people who speak Czech. And speaking Czech makes a complete difference to actually you have the foreigners who speak Czech and the foreigners who don't speak Czech. Pride on your language is essential because language is not only the way you communicate, it's part of your soul. The way you say things, the way you convey on a message tells you how your heart and soul feels. So keeping that steady is something really important. Now, if there is only one thing that perhaps hurts me and is part of the reason of the podcast, but I understand that because of your history, you are not used to foreigners still. So a little bit of the xenophobia and some groups are still a little bit racist. That is something that is global. It's not a Czech problem. Even in Mexico, we have it. We're classist. You're xenophobic. It's a global phenomena. So I wish that as a global phenomena would disappear, right? Because it's difficult for us foreigners. But overall, that's it. I mean, those are the things that I can spot on as critical.
Let me mention one thing that I think is relevant exactly to to what you were saying. I used to teach at part time at the University of Pardubice, and I had foreign students there. And there was a young lady from Peru, actually, from your part of the world, if not Mexico. And she told me she was. Well, she wasn't attacked physically, but she was verbally attacked because she has got darker complexion, and people thought that she was a Roma, and they were very rude to her. And that was something that, as a Czech, I really feel ashamed of, I have to say. Do you see such incidents often, perhaps?
So, this is a very important topic, and thank you for bringing it up. And I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna give just a preview. This is not a criticism to Czechia. As I said, these incidents today happen globally, even in Mexico, right? We're living in a world that is so global that is creating tension because countries feel their own culture is being shading away or erasing away. I have unfortunately faced that a couple of times in both Portugal and Prague. I was attacked, It took me time to recover from it in a sense of emotionally and mentally. I do not blame Czechia. I do not blame the Czech Republic. I believe this is a matter of the individual. A group of people did it. Perhaps they were afraid of me. Perhaps I was being very loud, right? Perhaps I was doing something wrong. Or simply perhaps, yeah, I was confused also as a Romani because they said Sika and these words that I don't want to say it because I don't believe in that, right? To me, they are Czech, period. Once I understood that this is not a global or a country issue, but it's an individual topic, that's why I launched part of the podcast because I wanted to be part of this solution. Education and talking and having an open forum is one of the many solutions we can have. Because maybe these people are afraid because they think that I might be taking their jobs, or these people are afraid because they have not seen me, or people like us, right? They have not seen us. And there is two ways in which you can react. You can be curious and go and ask, "Hey, how are you?" Or there is the violent thing. You don't belong here. Why you are taking my things? I want to respond with love. It's difficult. It is difficult. Indeed, even today, sometimes I get nervous, before any important event or when I'm alone or when I see a group of people following me. I get nervous. But maybe that's the opportunity and that's my mission to change that. Who knows? That's why I'm having Just Checking, and I'm glad it is getting the numbers because the messages I get on the DMs, like Alex, I got a message from a Czech person who was a hater on my art account. Like, oh, you go back home, blah, blah, blah. And when he just saw Checking, he wrote me on the Just Checking account and he said, TV, VOLE. I have never seen a foreigner being so proud of Czechia. Kudos to you. I regret that I insulted you. I'm proud of you. I wish I had known this from you. I'm sorry. Kudos, buddy. I'm gonna promote you. That evening I cried because that is the transformation that I wanted from Just Czechia. These people who do not know what foreigners can do to the benefit of the country. And he was right. Not many Czechs speak highly of Czech Republic in a public forum because I'm sponsoring this with my own money. No, I don't have sponsors. And the fact that he transformed, that he understood my philosophy. And I also wrote him, I'm sorry if I did something wrong, but I'm glad we are aligned. And thank you for recognizing the work that some foreigners are doing to promote Czech. No hard feeling. We're bros now. Let's work together to make this a bigger change. You help me if you talk to your friends who perhaps think like that, to give us patience. We don't have to be friends. Give us time to adapt and to show that we care.
That sounds quite an amazing experience, I would
It
say.
was. Oh God, I'm even getting emotional now.
Let me, though, ask you about another thing. This will be a longer introduction. I actually, well, I will boast with that a little bit. I did this series, I wrote a series for Czech television, Czech public television, about Quebec in Canada. And the main idea is that Quebec, for me at least, and I was supposed to give my personal view, Quebec in Canada for me is a piece, great chunk, I would say, well, it's much bigger than France, but I call it a piece of France in America. And what I admire about the Quebecois is that they keep the language so strongly. Sometimes they are even militant in how they want to keep their culture, but we have to take into account that they are next to New York, next to the United States, to this huge kind of Anglo-Saxon, English language influence, and they keep their culture. So I see this as a great example of how unique cultures can still survive in today's world. On the other hand, we live in the time of globalization, of global connections and everything, and like this morning when I came to this kind of shopping mall on the outskirts of my small town, I thought, well, this could be in Belgium, this could be in Germany. It's always the same, I mean, you see maybe slightly different shops, but many of the brands are the same, etc. So I see these two kind of factors and tendencies to be
Yeah.
crossing. And I just wonder, when you came back to Czechia, you mentioned people there were many more foreigners, etc. Still, Czechs, are a bit cautious when it comes to foreigners, if I generalize it a little bit. How do you see this kind of change being sort of transponded or revealed in Czechia?
Great topic. I also spent some time in Montreal studying at McGill Uni, so I identify with you. They're so cautious. They even have the older French, even now that in
The French,
France.
yeah.
Yes. So, how can I answer to that? Globalization has made countries lose a little bit of their touch. Wherever you travel, in the high street, you see same stores, same offers, right? So that takes away a little bit of the charm. So if I talk about Czechia as such, or the Czech Republic as such, 2006 gave me that view of the Czech Republic, right? The more there is no single truth because we all evolve, right?
Right.
So Czech Republic is now truth to 2026 or 2025. But back then, I could see the Czech Republic that was in the books, right? The Bohemia, the more musical, at least Prague. I'm talking about Prague. Sorry for the audience. My Czech Republic is Prague. So apologies, I'm gonna make it clear. The Bohemia, right, was more musical, was friendlier. This is what I saw back then. Now it's more European, even in the construction, right? Architecture, I think, is the key topic to now address. You go to Carling, looks European. You go to Prague 5, looks European. Every new development looks the same. It's losing some sort of the identity of
The kind of flavor, yeah? I
the
mean,
kind of flavor. There is no longer brutalism. There is no longer the Soviet versus the magnificence of the old Prague. It's the new modern functional architecture that you find in Belgium, London, Spain, everywhere. And that happens in Mexico too. You go to Mexico, and the new Mexico is very functional, similar to the US. And people say the top Mexicans are becoming Americanized. It is true. Am I sad about it? A little bit. Is it the consequence of the world? Yes, we cannot stop it. That's the world, right? I wish we could keep the good things of our essence that makes us different, because it is what makes us rich, and that's what makes traveling as an experience significant, right? Now it's down to people, and again, coming back to the Czechia project, those are the conversations I have. Belonging, identity. I remember Michal Treter said, one of my missions is to recover the old classic Czech values. And I was so happy to go deep onto that. What is that? You know, we care about music. We care about looking good, about being serious. And I was fascinated by discovering Czechia through those eyes, right? And that's something that I want to bring to the public eye. If I'm answering to your question, it's a tricky question to answer. And I don't want to follow into the politics because it's not my role, right? My role is to praise what it is. And yes, I wish all cultures, not only the Czech Republic, we could keep part of our essence. Because yes, it is being diluted by globalization. It is true. And it's not only the Czech Republic, it's everywhere. I mean, you go to Mexico now, to Mexico City. I was taking my Czech friends to Mexico City, and they said, wow, it looks like Bangkok or New York or London, but with Latin. And I'm like, oh my God, no, it looks like Mexico. But they were right. It looks like something they had already seen. And that's good, but at the same time, it's sad because I miss the old Mexico, right? Same way with the Czech Republic.
you know, I think this is connected because we are, in a way, touching on identity. And let me ask you
Absolutely.
personally. Okay, so you want to keep your Mexican identity, or are you considering yourself, in other words, as just a Mexican living in Prague? Or are you someone who, because you've been here for quite some time, who's influenced by that. So you are becoming a bit of a Pražák, let me put it like that.
Yeah, I'm a Pražák now. As I said, I would like Mexicans in Mexico or things in Mexico back there to keep their own culture and identity. But as I said, people who decide to move abroad, they go through a strange phenomena, which is an identity change. There is a new identity of the expat or the global person because you stop being your past. You cannot remain being Mexican because there are things that don't fit here, like myself being loud, talking on the metro, overexposing myself, oversharing. That doesn't fit here. So I had to adopt new ways of being or ways of behaving that fit the Czech Republic, and that creates a new identity in everyone who lives abroad. That doesn't fit 100% in Mexico, doesn't fit 100% here. The identity of an expat is unique, and that is a situation that nobody talks about, and that I want to address in my podcast because it is hard. It is rewarding because you are free and everybody's tolerant with you. Oh, he's foreigner. Let's give him the chance. He doesn't know, right? So that gives you freedom. But at the same time, you are an alien that you're not fully included. And that hurts. So you have that freedom of making mistakes and people will accept them because, oh, well, he's a foreigner. Okay, he's loud, right? But also, you are never fully part of the deep discussions because, no, he's not from here, it doesn't fit. Let's leave him aside, he's the Mexican, he's the crazy one. So it's a complicated topic that I want to start addressing. And that's why Prague Morning wrote, this podcast is unique. It's finally addressing something that everyone ignores. But all of us are global now. You have been global with it. You know what it is to not fit into a culture, even if you try to adapt the most. And belonging, but not belonging. Right?
Exactly. So, what are your plans with Just Checking? As you mentioned, you are financing it yourselves. Do you want to keep it that way, or are you looking for
No.
sponsors?
I'm actually looking for a sponsor. So anybody here who wants to work with me and work in this noble cause, because it is about promoting culture, identity, belonging. Happy to have a talk. It's not about making money. It is about keeping the quality of the production and guests. The plan is to keep on going, right? The numbers say it. People are interested in this. The reactions say it. The quality of guests say it. People want to talk about it because we all have been there. We all have traveled. Luckily, a lot of people now are exposed to this global experience. So we have fall into this circumstance in which, yes, it's beautiful, but it's lonely. So discussing that, being open to that, and trying to help societies to improve in their identity by incorporating these concepts and growing into tolerance. Again, I'm not saying that all foreigners are good. Hell no. Some foreigners are not productive, are not constructive, and I'm not in favor of that. I'm not talking about immigration. I'm not promoting people traveling. I'm talking about the people who are already in the country. Right? I'm not promoting immigration. I'm not inviting people to come to the Czech Republic. Don't take me wrong. It is not about that. The focus is once it happened, my conversation starts. What can we do to keep the best, to keep the good, to be tolerant with them, to differentiate, right? To be selective. Because also in Mexico, now a lot of people are coming to Mexico. I want the best to be in Mexico. I'm happy that they come, but I want the good ones to actually stay. Same with Czechia. It is my country. I want the good ones to actually stay. I'm divided into two countries that I consider home. So in that protection sense, my podcast is directed to that. Let us, citizens of the Czech Republic or citizens of Prague, be tolerant with the good ones, be careful, keep that strict eye that we have as Czechs, and as experts trained on being analytical, like me now, and be patient with the good ones that can help us grow. Because now, if we look around how the world is behaving and moving, we need good people and we need to focus on values to come back to a growth positive mindset.
So that was Alejandro Cruz, a Mexican living in Prague, reflecting on what it takes to adapt to a new culture and what that journey can teach you about yourself. I think that if you've ever lived abroad or are thinking about it, his experience might sound very familiar. That balance between staying true to who you are and learning to respect the rules of a different society is never simple. Thank you very much for listening, and if you like what I do, please don't forget to subscribe, share, or recommend Czechast. It really helps me to keep the podcast going. I'm Vít Pohanka. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay curious, and as we say in Czech, naslyšenou.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.